And then again, what that's going to allow us to do is say, well, okay, what if they're able to actually get the full 20 million for 2020 shipped? What if they're able to get the $500 million in 2021 or the full billion? We can start to look at some of those different scenarios. Hey everyone, Paul Clark here with Taking Stock Investing, and I want to walk through Moderna today. So as I sit here on 11/16, I'm just a little after the open, 9:45 when I'm filming this, and it's the second Monday in a row that the market has moved higher based on positive vaccine expectations. Last week it was with Pfizer coming out and saying that they had a vaccine that was going to be about 90% effective. Moderna has actually announced that they've got a vaccine that's going to be about 94.5% effective, and not just that it's more effective, it's actually going to be on pace to be available sooner than what Pfizer's vaccine is going to be available by. And Moderna is saying that they can actually ship 20 million doses of this vaccine by the end of the year. And then by next year, that they will actually be able to have somewhere between 500 million to 1 billion doses ready to be available. Okay, so when we look at the price that we can actually expect per dose, we can take some of those projections and we can start to model out how valuable this is on a per share basis, which of course is something I think that anybody interested in the stock would like to know. So when we look at this, Moderna has, like, with some early contracts, they've been selling some doses of this, somewhere between like $32 to $37 a dose with some countries. But, certainly, as other competitors come online with their vaccines, that price could be under some pressure. And there could also be just, other countries that are going to be able to negotiate this a little bit better. But I'm going to take a look at two different scenarios. I'm going to say that, with one, that with the minimum case here, I'm going to say that they're going to be able to get about $20 per dose. And then I'm going to take a look at it, assuming they can get about $30 per dose. And then again, what that's going to allow us to do is say, well, okay, what if they're able to actually get the full 20 million for 2020 shipped? What if they're able to get the $500 million in 2021 or the full billion? We can start to look at some of those different scenarios. So something to keep in mind, their share price based on this news, they've been up about 10%, so their stock price is up over $98 in the live trading. In the pre-market, they were up over $100 per share, so they were up a little bit more, kind of pulled back a little bit, at least initially. I know with a lot of these, kind of volatile announcements that there certainly can be, some pretty quick moves. So this is something we'll have to keep an eye on throughout the day. But Moderna has about 395 million shares outstanding. So when we take a look at that, with 20 million doses potentially shipping from the end of the year, if they were to ship all of those at a price point averaging about $20 per dose, that would allow them to generate revenue of about $400 million. And then once again, we can also take a look at that at $30, and that would be about $600 million. This is obviously just going to be a guesstimate, but if we take a look at what their gross margin could be, I think it might be fair to assume that maybe they could earn about a 50% gross margin on the vaccine, which would mean that they would have gross margin dollars of just half the revenue, so between 200 to 300 million. And then if we assume a 20% tax rate, that would get them down to saying that they'd have about $160 million to $240 million of additional net income as a result of shipping 20 million doses in 2020. Now, again, when we look at that in terms of the 395 million shares outstanding, that implies that it would actually be a boost to their net income by about 41 to 61 cents. So nothing incredibly substantial based on that number, but it certainly gets more interesting when we start to look at it from the 2021 projection. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. So again, the company is kind of given guidance and saying that they have the capacity to be able to create or manufacture between 500 million to 1 billion doses of this. That, of course, doesn't guarantee that they're going to sell that many. It's very dependent upon, if there's going to be, any negative results that come out of, future trials with Moderna. That can negatively impact them. A competitor coming out with a better effective rate, a competitor coming out with a lower price. I mean, all these things could ultimately impact, of course, what they're going to sell. But again, if we looked at and said, okay, well, what if they did sell 500 million? What if they did sell 1 billion? Well, based on the 500 million that they could sell, if we take a look at that at $20 per dose, that would imply about $5 billion of revenue. Again, the upper end would be about $7.5 billion of revenue. And then ultimately, if we come down to, again, their net income impact of that after looking at the gross margin at 50%, after looking at the tax on that of about 20%, that would imply that from 2021 alone, that would be worth about $10 to $15 per share, okay? And at this point, it might be actually kind of good to keep in mind that prior to 2020, so 2020 has seen Moderna stock, really skyrocket based on, the assumption or speculation of a potential vaccine. And prior to this, Moderna stock was trading really kind of between $10 to $20, kind of really hovering for the most part of around a midpoint about $15. So, I think it can be interesting to look at this and say that a base case for the stock without the vaccine is probably going to be a valuation around $15. And then we can start to look at what the total worth of the vaccine is going to be after we project it out for a number of years. And then we can add that back to that $15 that the market was already valuing Moderna at, and just get a rough idea for, kind of the valuation for this. So that's kind of an approach I'm going to take with this. But then we can also walk through, so that was with $500 million. Of course, we would just double that. So if they were able to actually sell the full billion that they say that they could potentially be able to manufacture in 2021, then they would be looking at between $20 to $30 in net income per share just for 2021. Okay. Now, what becomes kind of interesting, and what I like to do is when I'm kind of modeling some of these different scenarios out, is I like to create some different scenarios and say, okay, well, what if they were able to sustain this level of, vaccine sales, this level of doses for X number of years? What would they be worth? And one of the scenarios, just for context, I said, okay, well, what if they were actually going to sell 500 million doses of this vaccine all the way up until 2040? Okay, so basically like 20 years essentially worth of being able to sell this, okay? And again, understanding that for each year, that would be a net income boost for them of about $4 million. Or I'm sorry, no, $4 billion. Big numbers we're talking about here, right? So they'd be generating revenue of about $10 billion. We'd be talking about net income being about $4 billion. Well, if we looked at that $4 billion all stretched out to 2040, which again, all implying half a billion doses sold, which is, I feel like my own, kind of gut feeling says that that's a really unlikely scenario. But if that was to happen, you would say that the net income boost or the valuation boost would be about $92 per share. And then if you went back and you actually added then the $15, kind of the base before the vaccine news kind of started to help propel the stock forward, you'd be looking at a valuation then of about $107 per share. Okay, so again, literally sustaining 500 million doses, having those sales, being able to maintain up that price point of about $20, okay, that would still only leave them worth about $107, where they're currently trading at about $100. So certainly that doesn't leave that much upside. And if we looked at a more conservative case for this, we could take a look at this and say, well, what if they were able to sustain the 500 million doses? If they were able to sell that in 2021, 2022, and 2023, what if they were able to sustain that? Then that would be a boost to their stock of about $25 per share. Again, based on the 50% gross margin, based on being able to sell about $20 on average for that time frame, you're getting a boost of about $25. You put that with the $15 for the valuation we've been talking about, and then all of a sudden you say maybe they're worth about $40 a share in that particular situation. And then, so we walked through kind of two extremes. On one extreme, we're saying, hey, what if they're able to effectively sell 500 million all the way through 2040? And we say, hey, they're about $107 a share. What if they're actually only going to be able to have strong sales from this vaccine for the next few years? What that is going to do to their stock? And then you say, okay, maybe they're worth about $40. Now, again, you put that in perspective. Going from $15 of the stock to $40 because of the vaccine, that is still a big increase. Certainly not insignificant, but it's certainly a lot less than what they currently are trading at. And, another thing to keep in mind is that when we go ahead and take a look at Moderna, that they are actually their operating income, or they've been generating an operating loss, from 2016, 17, 18, and 19. Okay. So you look at their net income, you look at their operating income, that's all negative. You look at their free cash flow available. They've actually been burning cash every year since 2017. So while this would be a big boost, their main core business was not generating a lot of cash anyway. So I think that Moderna really, the valuation with this is kind of based on being able to have the potential to come out with a big home run like we're actually seeing with this vaccine. Okay, so I think that's a different story than to say that, hey, if their business was humming along and generating free cash flow and, was profitable, all of those things, then maybe you could actually be a little bit more bullish with the stock. But I think it's worthwhile to keep in mind that this was a company burning cash for years prior to the potential boost from the vaccine sales. So what does all this mean to me? I think that certainly if you were to look at this stock and you were going to have any of these numbers, if you were able to say, hey, I think they might be able to generate 500 million doses, or they might be able to manufacture that, and you would have been looking at buying this stock, back when it was, $20, $30, I think that could have represented a good speculative play. I just can't get behind it at these numbers. That being said, I think I am generally, a pretty conservative investor. I'm going to really want to look for opportunities where when I do some sort of either revenue analysis, cash flow analysis, I want to be able to put myself in a position where if I think that the value of the company is actually going to be worth $50, I want to be able to buy in at, $20 or at $30. I want to have, that margin of safety, where I can be able to be wrong on the valuation by a little bit. So let's say if it's actually not worth 50 at full value, let's say it's worth 40, but again, I was able to buy in at 20, then I'm still able to profit from that, and I don't need it to get all the way to 50 to make money. So again, I have kind of a more conservative approach, but I still really enjoy laying out situations where we can actually think about companies in terms of the actual fundamentals, when we think about the actual projections, some of the price guidance, all of those things. And then we kind of just lay it out, and again, to take a look at the number of shares, start making some projections. Just say, okay, what would have to happen to actually support the current share price? Okay, so that's my take on it. I've got to tell you that, of course, if they are successful to do this, it would be great news. I think for all of us to be able to get back to normal sooner, that would certainly be welcomed. We're just completely separate from any benefit from this stock or the stock market in general. And, based on this news, again, the stock market is up. You're continuing to see that rotation out of tech stocks. So that's something to keep an eye on. But wanted to put this together. Let me know if you guys think, that this actually has more upside than what I'm giving it credit for. Is this something that you're going to be buying or going to be investing for the long term? Are you swing trading? What's your take on this? What's your strategy? Let me know in the comments below, and I will see you next video.